Hello everyone. Hi. Welcome to today's session of Zenskar's webinar series. Today we have a very interesting topic that a lot of you have written to us about. We're going to be talking about consumption-based pricing, specifically in a product-led growth environment, what the PLG environment really means, what usage-based pricing means in that context, what kinds of challenges are faced by product teams and finance professionals when dealing with the downstream effects of consumption-based pricing, and a bunch of other kind of related topics. Our guest today is Daniel Sharon. He's based in Tel Aviv in Israel. He's the head of finance and operations at Quack. It's a machine learning ops platform. Before this, he used to be a consultant at EY Parthenon. And he has dealt with the nuances of consumption-based pricing very intricately. He has some quite passionate thoughts on the topic, so we thought it'd be great to chat with him and bring his insights to the rest of the audience. So without wasting much time, we'll get started. Daniel, maybe the audience obviously knows you, but could you maybe take half a minute to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. I hope you can hear me good.
Yeah.
As you mentioned, I used to be a consultant for EY Parthenon, which is the strategy consulting business of Ernst and Young. I've been around startups and tech for a few years, and I've seen a lot of different business models. I think, the straightforward SaaS business that could sell to customers, to enterprise, or whether it's not a mid-sized business, and to get paid in advance for services that they have yet to provide. Now, being in a consumption-based business, it sounds like, wow, this is super easy, right? Because you're getting paid in advance for something you still haven't really provided. You do get the money in advance, and I think like the interesting part is that people that weren't at the other side of the business model of consumption don't really know what's the core challenges we face as consumption-based businesses. So I had experience most of the years of seeing straightforward business models where you get to pay in advance or month by month. Um, Now here in Quack, I lead finance and operation, meaning that I do run also the straight like the standard finance processes and business operation, which is a really interesting, circle of dance between um, getting the customer to get what they want as far as the business and getting them to pay the money to make the business run. So yeah.
Awesome. Cool. Saurabh, I know you had a question on product-led growth itself. Maybe you can get started.
Yeah, I think the first question, like just to start things off, is like what is product-led growth? Would love to hear what you think product-led growth really means.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question. I think the world is divided into two. As far as PLG, it's like first part is people hearing PLG and saying like, "Oh, don't talk to me about this BS," because what's PLG? It's basically just a buzzword, and don't really believe that it's possible to sell a product without, or some products without a sales person managing the sale. And the other part, which is like I would say that I'm on the population of the other part where I do generally believe that some products are generally a lot more easy or comfortable being sold, um, as not necessarily as a part of a general, B2B standard sales process. And the way I see it, and obviously there's a lot of references online to get a glimpse of what PLG is really like. But basically PLG, in the way I see it and the way we do it in Quack, is making the product sell itself, and have the product be easy to use, friendly UI, something you can go online, search it, maybe get, some blog talking about it, and then just go online to the platform, the app itself, and put a credit card and start using it and get the real like benefit from the product from the early days or early hours or even minutes of using it. Um, I would say that a lot of what I've seen is people, um, you know, mixing between PLG um, and selling using a self-serve model. I think there's a difference as far as, this is something we're doing in Quack. Quack is a pretty complex product, and we do have a self-serve part of our business is to, to have people try our product as a self-serve product, but it doesn't mean we're actively doing PLG strategies because Quack is super complex, right? It's not a no-code type of platform. You do need to, to write your own code and to know something about MLOps or ML engineering in order to get started. So I do think there are products where there are really PLG core based products where you can go ahead, connect your data, connect your app or whatever solution you're going after, and just put in a credit card and start using the product. But there are some strategies where you use PLG concepts, right? The UI and the experience and the value in order to draw people inside the product. And, after they seen the value, they say, okay, now let's go into a technical demo or let's go into a POC and really get things going after we try the product. Because, I think it's something that has to do with, the attention we all have. We don't have, like, I think everyone is competing on attention marketing, sales, SDRs, BDRs. It's like a battle of everyone's attention. So I do believe that in this form of environment where everyone's trying to sell, like I have, I think 15 messages in LinkedIn a day of someone trying to sell me a solution, a software or a service. So I do believe that if I'll see like an interesting product, fintech product or some sort of an ops or sale software that I like, the best way for me to know what's going on there just to try it. So I do believe in having to focus on if it's PLG, meaning that you want some customers to stay on the platform and not even get to talk to you. And the other option, the way we see it right now, is to have the platform be like, a glimpse of what we can do, and then have the customer reach out and say, let's do like a more expanded POC of the solution.
Got it. So actually, there are like a few questions that come out of like what you mentioned. So there were like two or three things that I'd like to dive a little bit deeper into. You mentioned that there is a difference between PLG and self-serve, and there are like specific strategies that may not be relevant for both. So can you like dive a little deeper into what those differences are?
Yeah, a lot of the things there, maybe someone would hear me and say, "Oh, he's like saying, I don't know, silly stuff," because obviously, like PLG, if we'll take like a circle of PLG, obviously self-serve attributions or self-serve features must be a part of PLG, right? But like the way I see it is there are products which are self-serve, but are not necessarily helping the company grow on its own. That you still need a sales rep, an account executive, account manager to help you expand as a customer. So I think every product in the world is basically going through a motion of being more self-serve. I think you see it in every product out there that is a lot more self-serve than it used to be. You can take a simple example like Salesforce, which is obviously like a legacy product everyone has some experience on, and I think these days it's a lot more self-serve where you can build your own reports by having some, widgets that tell you what you need to do. But PLG, the way I see it is PLG. Obviously, if you're doing PLG or some sort of like some form of PLG, you need to have like self-serve features because you won't be able to get along. Like users will come in, and we've seen this in Quack. We're obviously constantly trying to evolve and get better in what we do. But we've seen users, going into a platform and getting, whoa, I don't understand how to proceed. And obviously, for the model to be scalable in PLG, and as you grow and more and more features to be self-serve, you need to have like you need to invest a lot in design, in UI, in UX. In our world, because we're selling to developers, it's also like the developer experience needs to be more streamlined, more something that users can jump on a platform and just go ahead and start using it, and like it's super intuitive. I think you can take like the extreme example is taking a product like Miro. I don't know if you guys know the product, like the board.
Yeah.
It's super intuitive, and obviously it's so much like a self-serve model because it's maybe even a child could go into the platform and understand what does he need to do. So, the scale is pretty large on what is really self-serve and what's not. There are obviously industries where it's a lot easier to be self-serve, like, Miro or collaboration tools and stuff. But there's a lot more, like Quack is the extreme side of it, that it's a lot harder to be self-serve because there's a lot more complex technical things in the product you need to make um, friendly. So yeah.
So just to kind of double click on that, and this is actually very relevant for a lot of our audience because they, most products I would say are still at that point where not the entire value can be captured in a self-serve manner. I'm not talking about prosumer products, but B2B products tend to be that way where after a certain point, the user doesn't know what to do and they need to either
Yeah.
talk to someone or they need some kind of a POC. But I guess what I'm hearing you say is even in that kind of a model, you can incorporate the elements of product-led growth by giving a glimpse of what the product would look like. And if yes, then could you maybe dive one level deeper into what you mean by glimpse? Like what kind of a glimpse is the user getting? At which
Yeah.
point they want to start talking to somebody else?
I'll give you an example. I think first of all, if you're approaching, like, say you're I don't know, a seed startup approaching this world of go to market, and you're asking yourself and founders and investors, hey, what do we think is the best go to market? How do we bring this product to market the best way possible? I think the first answer needs to be like a question where you ask yourself, who is our ideal buyer? What's the persona like? So if the persona, let's take like an extreme example of cyber security, where the buyers are usually like, CISOs and, information officers in the company, really, let's say really high seniority executives. I don't think I imagine a world where CISOs come into, the internet and just Google a product and try to, self-serve, an information security system that has to do with all the data in the company and just, pour data inside and try it out. So this is an extreme example of why, um, of how, like, if your persona is this CISO, for example, I wouldn't even try, or maybe there's, extreme examples of people doing it, but I personally wouldn't try PLG or self-serve. But let's take the other angle. Let's say you're a startup developing some sort of a QA, like, a code platform for developers where the audience is really, it could be even, 20, 30-year-old engineers engineer trying to get his code validated through some, AI software I just made up. Um, you can obviously like incorporating PLG or incorporating self-serve features in that could be super beneficial. And to your question, the way I see it is you don't necessarily need a product that is totally streamlined and PLG and self-serve like A to Z, because first of all, it would take too long to build, right? You don't want to build, like you don't want to spend 2 years building a self-serve product and then getting it to market when you run out of cash, or when you understand that the users don't like the product after you've spent 2 years building it. So the way I
Yeah.
see it is you can start by just building a product where, let's take this software company I invented that has like a QA platform for developers, and it's really it's from a Python student can use it. A Python student for a BA or a BSc can start using it for free, and then you get charged, I don't know, by the seat or something like that. It could be super relevant to build like a self-serve onboarding where he can try the product, he can upload his own code and try to get it validated and to get some insights on what's the error likes and what's the gaps in his code. And then let's say he has like, there's a lot of platform you see it. It's not like I invented it. Like after, let's say he has like, I don't know, 2,000 notes to put in as his script. And when he runs out of notes, he said, instead of saying like, hey, put a credit card and get more, you have like an option where you ran out of credits to use our platform. Let's talk. If it's interesting, let's talk to sales, and you get to schedule a demo, or you get to say, okay, reach out to me in a week, reach out to me in 2 weeks, and then I like as an entrepreneur, an executive, I can get to see what my users are doing and get insights on them, and then go into a sales call and say, wow, this guy is super interesting. I have really core evidence of what he's doing in my platform to say I can build like a specifically customized demo to make your in this example, to make your code run a lot faster and with a lot less bugs or errors. So in that evidence, you get to use the self-serve features in this model and get to sell a lot more accurately, maybe a lot more faster, because the deal will be super easy. You'll go on
Yeah.
demo and say, "Wow, I love the software, I love the platform. How much does it cost?" You'll obviously just go on the negotiation part of the process instead of doing the entire POC. So you've like managed to get some insights on your users. You've managed to see a lot more users trying your platform, and you get a lot more feedback loop on this. And you've shortened your sales cycle. So obviously it's amazing. It doesn't necessarily work. We gave the example of the cyber security company. I think it's an extreme example of obviously self-serve features not being that relevant. But in our period of time, in our generation, I think more and more B2B, even enterprise software companies, will
Mm.
incorporate self-serve features in their product.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
No, I mean that's only in this environment where, to your point, where there's limited attention, you want users to find a way to see value without spending too much of their attention, which involves talking to somebody before they actually get interested. I know we're a little short on time, so I want to make a quick segue into consumption-based pricing, and maybe you can quickly talk about why consumption based pricing makes or does not make sense if you have a product led growth motion, and then I'd like to kind of dive one level deeper into, if it makes sense, what kind of challenges do you face as compared to a model where you get paid upfront without having to actually deliver something. And we'll double click on that. But yeah, let's talk a little bit about consumption based pricing in the context of product led growth.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
sure.
to add to that,
Yeah,
sorry,
yeah, go ahead.
just to add to that, uh, like why does the conversation of usage-based pricing even come into question when you talk about product-led growth?
Yeah, I think these are like great questions. Obviously, intuitively, like it's super intuitive to see that PLG and usage-based pricing are connected in a sense of, let's talk about usage-based pricing as, as a concept. What does it mean, usage-based pricing? I think if we take a step back from what we know as SaaS businesses, let's take an example where I come into a supermarket and I take a basket and start to fill in groceries, right? This is what we all do when we go into the supermarket, and it's super intuitive to say, obviously, you won't get paid or you won't pay for anything you haven't taken, right? You haven't consumed in your basket. So basically, usage-based pricing, in my sense, is the obvious thing for consuming anything, basically.
Mm.
Like thinking,
Yeah.
think calories. Think of eating calories. It's the same thing. Why would you be, I don't know, obese if you're not eating anything, right? So maybe there's like extreme examples of this happening, but basically, um, usage-based pricing is consuming groceries, it's consuming calories. So the way I see it is, this is where we started, right? The history like is a lot more used to being consumption based than being a regular SaaS subscription model. I think when we like transition, like most SaaS company transition into the subscription model, obviously this is like an amazing model. It says like, now let's go to the supermarket and say you're paying like $1,000 per month. Take whatever you want. Now, obviously, the entire like motion of what you're doing as a user will change, right? You'll try to do whatever you can to take everything in your basket, and I don't know, maybe you'll do a lot of mistakes of forgetting things you wanted because you're not accurately measuring the value. So the way I see it is, usage-based pricing is paying for value versus paying for, just paying and hoping that you use the value.
Mhm.
So I
Actually,
like now, yeah, I like as someone that's been into the usage-based pricing for a few, I would say, months to years. I think the model as, and I'm putting my finance hat aside because obviously usage-based pricing as a model for finance is a lot harder. In some cases, it's not that harder, but it usually is. So as a consumer, I want to pay for only what I use. I don't want to pay for something I haven't used. So and the way I see it is that connection between PLG is super intuitive because in PLG you go on and give someone a product or software or a platform and say, hey, um, this is super intuitive. Use what you want. It's super easy to use. Try it. I don't know. Get your value from it, right? And it's a lot easier to grow when you give someone valuable services or platforms and
Yeah.
tell them, and you're going to be billed only for what you consume, right? So now, as a consumer, whether or not I'm a consumer, I am an enterprise, I'm a developer, I enjoy consuming this product because it's intuitive, it's self-serve, and I pay only for what I use, right? Whether or not it's API calls, it's metrics, data, storage, whatever. It could be a lot of metrics. So I do think they hold, like PLG and usage-based hold hand to hand in that fact. And in a sense, it's a lot more measuring the value and paying for
Mhm.
the value instead of quantity and paying for a subscription. I hope it
Fair,
makes sense.
fair. Yeah, I mean, the way I look at it is, given that a user is trying to start getting onboarded to a product, they haven't started using it completely, they're still using it very incrementally in a PLG environment. The friction probably becomes much lesser if you don't force them to pay a large amount upfront and you just say that, hey, start small and pay for what you're using. But
Exactly.
arguably, you could argue that the friction could be even lower if you give a freemium model, saying that, hey, you start
Yeah.
for free. Uh, and then, once you hit a limit, then you have to start paying for a subscription based plan.
Yeah,
What's your
I
take?
want to say there's a lot of models, right? You can do the freemium, the
Yeah.
free trial. You can do, there's a lot of models. I don't have a preference. I know there's a lot of VCs and entrepreneurs talking about this, you know, taking the freemium or the other way of doing PLG. I think it depends on the business, right? There's a lot of, you know, good companies using the freemium. There's a lot of good companies using just free trial. Um, but I think you need to measure what your users are after.
Yeah.
It makes a lot more sense in a way.
Fair.
By the way, not all users understand usage-based pricing, right? Like I said
Yeah.
before, you're paying for value. It sounds like, plain vanilla, but maybe if I'm using Canva, I don't want to pay for how much presentations I made. I just want to pay my $10 a month and let me be. Like I don't want to keep measuring what I'm doing. I just want to
Yeah.
pay $10 and go ahead. So I think that consumer like I don't see a lot of companies succeeding using usage-based pricing in consumer
Yeah.
softwares. So it's an important note as well.
That's an interesting distinction you make. And
Yeah.
on that, again, given that we're running out of time, I want to dive out the meat of the discussion which we started off with. Now that some businesses have decided, okay, consumption-based pricing makes sense for us. Our end persona likes to see, likes to pay that way. That's how they measure value. What does it mean for finance? Like, what kind of challenges do you face as a finance person, and how do you overcome those? And how is it different from the subscription world or even the license-based world?
Yeah. I'll say first of all, it's a headache. It's a headache for finance. It's obviously, let's take an example of me building a company that a customer pays in advance for a year, and the other way is the company. I'm building a company with the company, um, like the customer is paying for only for what he uses, and I need to measure it each month, right? I don't know how much he uses. We end the month, and then we calculate how much metric he used, and then make sure we don't have errors and stuff. So it's complex. Obviously, the first model is super easy, right? I just need to build a customer, and he could pay me whatever like the contract says. I don't need to have some discussions on how much we've built or whatnot. So obviously, usage-based pricing in general is harder. I do want to say that it's easier as far as measuring. First of all, I think it's something worth mentioning that finance is also divided into parts. If you take the billing part of process of finance, it's
Yeah.
harder because there's a lot more friction, right? You need to bill the customer 12 times a year instead of one, which is a lot more friction, like I would say. But I would say that on the accounting part of finance, like revenue recognition, I think it's easier because basically when you have usage-based pricing or metrics, your revenue recognition pretty straightforward because the customer is already using, he's only paying for what he uses. And the problem with SaaS companies on the subscription model is that a customer like paid in advance for a year. How do we know how much of the service he consumed, right? Even the accounting, like, principles that the GAAP and IFRS, for public companies know that, you need to measure whether or not the customer is using the services. You can't recognize revenue only because you've received funds from customers. That's
Yeah.
okay in a cash point of view, but on an accounting point of view, you need to
Yeah.
recognize how much value or how much services the customer has used. So usage-based pricing, the minute you use this model, it's easier to recognize revenue because you know how much the customer is using the software, the product. Um, but obviously, you're paying a lot more attention to the billing and collection part because it's a lot to handle. There's a lot more tech stack to have. You need to have a data warehouse to store all the information in the metrics in order to take them out and build the customer on the metrics. Obviously, there's a lot of tracking to do and auditing to do to make sure the numbers are correct because in a data warehouse you can have errors in the data and you don't want to end up billing a customer for um, miscalculated metrics. So it's pretty much a headache for finance, but like for if you build the right system, and I guess like Zenskar might really help in the process of streamlining this usage-based pricing or helping in the process. I guess you need a lot more tools and systems in place to get usage-based pricing rolling instead of regular subscription. It's super easy. You just build a customer, pay in advance. And I just want to say, I think in these days, usage-based pricing, it makes a lot more sense to a lot of companies that are using subscription-based models. I do want to say that it feels pretty weird. I do have like some subscription softwares were built on a yearly basis. Some of it, it feels pretty weird that we're paying for like in advance for the entire year. We might end up not using it and we're still paying for it. So as far as measuring, like if I'm a VC and I see a usage-based company, I would take a double click on what I see on the customers because measuring your ARR run rate as a startup with usage base means that you actually have users using the platform. It's a lot more specific than a company that has like 20 contracts with people or with companies. They have no idea if they're using the platform or not, right? So, a
Mm.
run rate of a usage-based company and a run rate of a standard subscription company is a whole lot different. I took the VC hat for a second.
Yeah. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that I
Yeah.
think can be a topic for a very long discussion on how to do metric reporting in a consumption-based world. I know we're
Yeah.
almost out of time, so I want to keep the discussion focused on the challenges. And one last question, Saurabh, I think you have something. If not, I can go. But yeah, we probably have time for one last question.
No, I think you can go next.
Cool, awesome. Yeah, so just you mentioned on the challenges with respect to consumption-based billing. Of course, one is that you have to bill 12 times in the year as opposed to let's say just once a year.
Yeah.
Outside of that, you also mentioned that you need a data warehouse, and the data warehouse needs to kind of do accurate usage tracking on the basis of which you are billing your customers. But like even in the subscription world, you could end up billing 12 times a year. It doesn't have to be just once a year. If it's a monthly subscription, you still bill 12 times a year. So is the
Right.
complexity primarily because of the fact that the consumption data the consumption data needs to be tracked accurately and that needs to be married with billing, or is there some other level of complexity that arises for finance because of consumption based billing?
Yeah. First of all,
Consumption
you're
also.
right. Yeah, you're right. I think there's a few, layers of complexity. First layer is you'll have to build them month over month. Okay, I don't know a
Yeah,
lot of companies using usage-based pricing and billing yearly. It's not very common.
yeah,
It's pretty like abnormal. So first of all, you're
yeah,
billing them 12 times a year. Second layer is that you need to make sure what's the tiers like. What's the tiers like? It's not basically just, if it's API calls times, I don't know, $1, it's easy, right? You just take how many API calls and multiply them by dollar each month. But most usage-based pricing and obviously Quack, you can take a look in our website. Our pricing is pretty complex, like it's more complex than that. You need to make sure the pricing is right for each tier. I mean, you have not only one tier of usage-based pricing, right? You have one metric that is billed monthly, and it costs like $15. You have the second metric, which is billed by the hour, and it
hmm,
costs like $0.5. And you have a third metric, which is, I don't know, storage, which is billed by the day, and it's, gigabyte times, I don't know, $3. So now you
hmm,
need to make sure every metric is defined correctly. And the third layer, last one, is the actual data warehousing where you take the data out and you query it and making sure that you have the first layer, which is the invoices, and second layer, which is the pricing, and third layer, which is the data, and you take it all and you make it into invoices each month. That's a whole big operation. In order
yeah.
just to, and this could happen like even like if a company adopts a usage-based pricing from the get-go, it means that you need to do everything I mentioned from like the first customer you land. And it's not like it sounds really intimidating. I think using the right products and tools is my best advice is, obviously you'll start by using spreadsheets. I do recommend transitioning into like a more complex product as you scale and go further down your go-to-market. But there's a lot of tools today trying to streamline the process. I'm sure you can find them online. This is my best advice on this for finance professionals.
Cool. I know you have to go somewhere else, Daniel, so I'll give you back some time before your next meeting. Thank you so much for
Yeah.
sharing your insights. Super, super helpful. And yeah, I'm sure our audience will take a lot away from this discussion. So thanks again for being with us.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you for having me. Thanks a lot.